and finalize on what you started. We are just looking at building a great organizational culture. And I believe you've had a lot of insights into what sort of culture are we trying to build and what sort of components are very critical in line with building this culture. So today there'll be a number of areas that I'll be touching on, but I'll also be looking forward to get also your feedback and also to get your insights about some of these things that we talk about making culture. Because every time, whenever we complain about the organization, you find that people will always touch on culture. They will say the organizational culture, they'll talk about the culture of the people. You'll find them complaining that the way things are being done is not proper, it's not professional, the way people are carrying out themselves. There's a lot of biasness, there's a lot of discrimination and all that. So all that compoundedly, then it touches on the culture of the organization. At times we blame the leadership and say that the top leadership is not well enough to handle that organization, to drive it to the next level. But every time we do that, then what lingers in our minds is what sort of decisions, what sort of strategies needs to be put in place to avert such kind of situations. And that is why we're going to have this discussion today. And in fact, I'm looking forward because we are starting with something on communication. And at times, you realize that whenever we have a challenge of communication, or whenever the organization does not promote free communication, just like you looked at open door policy. And I know literally sometimes we assume that open door policy is where when you get to your office, it's open. Apparently, that's not really the case, because you may have a door open, but when I walk to the office, I find you're facing this other side. You're talking to me, but your mind is not. It's like you're not actually attentive to what I'm trying to do in your office. You walk to somebody's desk and they are busy doing their own things. You're trying to talk to them, you're trying to engage them, but you find that they seem to be drawn into their own things. And you find that the level of attention looks to be so shaky in that particular moment. So by looking at an open door policy, then we are not just looking at the literal element of the door being open, but we are looking at the adaptiveness, somebody's willingness to listen, somebody's willingness to get to understand what you're talking about, and just that aspect of being welcoming. How do we get people to be welcoming to other people? So if I can get to an office and you stop what you're doing and you listen to me, that's, for me, it's an open door policy. But in an event where I walk to your office and you seem to be so engrossed in other things, or sometimes I get in and you tell me, go back. I don't have time for you. That's already a negation to this concept of building a positive culture. So I'll be looking at that. I'll also be looking at how do we enhance constructive culture, positive culture, and in other words, what also are some of the problems that come with weak cultures. And you find that in most cases, we operate and we oscillate between strong culture and weak cultures. At times, we want the weak culture we want to promote the weak culture to become strong, but it also depends with what sort of practices are actually in the weak culture that we are trying to look at. So that's what I'm going to focus on. So as I start, let me share my screen. Let's share my screen as I start. So just confirm that you can see my screen. So that's my screen on building great organizational culture. And as I was starting off, I said communication is key. Communication is like the DNA for any success in the organization. Through communication, That's when we minimize the grapevine. Through communication, that's why we minimize resistance. Through communication, that's why we achieve engagement. Through communication, we achieve involvement. But anytime we do not enhance free communication, that's where you start hearing about rumors, you start hearing about people thinking otherwise, people just communicating things because it's through lack of communication. Then you find that we also promote ignorance. Okay. Slideshow, fine. All right, so as I was saying, that we need to enhance communication because it is like the DNA of all the activities that we do. If you want to minimize conflict, then let's communicate properly, let's communicate at the right time, let's communicate the right information. If you want to minimize rumors in organization, let's always ensure that we communicate. If you want to minimize the resistance in the people, then communication has to be adhered to. But in the event that we disregard communication, then it becomes, we start breeding a lot of resistance, we start breeding a lot of confusion, and people will not actually understand exactly what is expected of them. This communication also comes all the way from when you have a new employee, you recruit a new employee to the organization, but according to you, you expect them to fit into the culture, but they don't understand how they're supposed to communicate in these. Who are they supposed to be accountable to? What sort of policies, what sort of practices exist, and how are they supposed to conform? So whenever we fail at that initial stage, that's when we start blaming and saying that this person is not doing things as expected. But you find that when you go back, we trace it to our procedures that did not enhance this person to fit in. So as a result of that interaction that we enforce within the organization, then you find that we get people to be able to understand what expectations are there and how do they fit in that organization. And it's also very important that transparency is enhanced because when things are done transparently, then you find that individuals or staff are able to understand each other. They're able to understand the policies, they're able to understand the objectives, they're able to understand the direction of the organization. Even they're able to understand the leadership. Okay, so for us to have that healthy organization, then we must ensure that communication is effective, and that's what will build a positive culture. When I communicate to you, you're able to understand what I'm meaning, even if I have a differing opinion, but it's through that communication that you'll be able to understand, okay, that James here has a differing opinion. And because of this differing opinion, then how is my opinion contrasting with his, and at the same time, how is my opinion similar to his? And by listening to each other, then we are able to have a concurrence. That's why it's important to have this communication, because at times communication is also hindered by lack of confidentiality, where we sometimes have people who do not keep confidential information. So because of that lack of confidentiality, then it makes people not to be so open to communicate. But as that happens, you find that it's going to injure the working relationships. It's going to injure, even people will not be open to discuss limitations that can be handled by staff at that level. So it's also very critical that we enhance communication, and also ourselves have to be true to ourselves and ensure that we also uphold highest levels of confidentiality, because there are things that are very sensitive at times when we need to discuss them. But then, how do I perceive you? How do you portray yourself? How do you brand yourself in such a way that I'm able to openly share information with you? How has the organization created an environment where people are free to communicate? Or do we have an environment where people feel that if I say something, this thing will be, somebody can use it against me, okay? But if we have a culture where people feel that we are discussing something in this room, and from this room, everything stops here, and we must ensure that we work towards a collective responsibility, then you find that it will change the trajectory of that aspect of communication. So the significance of this, for example, you find that when there is proper communication, then you find that there'll be a better working culture between the top management and the lowest level of management. Then also you find that the right information will be passed from the senior and the juniors. There'll be that necessary information that will be communicated at the right time. And also people will be understanding the responsibilities more vividly. Once this communication has been done, then it will be very clear for everyone on what sort of roles and responsibilities that has been delegated or what is expected of them. Then similarly, also people will be free, there'll be freedom. People will be at liberty to share their ideas and concepts in an open forum without necessarily feeling that somebody will not listen to them. So because of that, once the communication is fully enhanced, then you find that people will be more innovative. They'll come up with brilliant ideas because they feel that these ideas will be listened to. These ideas can be modified for the betterment of the organization. Then also, it will also enhance what sort of new ideas, new elements that can the organization focus on. Then at the same time, through effective communication, then you're able to manage meetings very well. Then also people feel that we are treating them equally because the information is not held for certain people at the expense of others. So others will not feel that this information only was channeled to a few people, but it was done to everyone. So that you don't find yourself, at times you find people saying that, I'm not aware. When was that communication sent? So that being economical with communication is what breeds a lot of resentment in the people. Then through that also we're able to get feedback. Through proper communication, then we get feedback, and this feedback will assist us or will assist people to be able to take action, and also generally just to feel that the kind of information that has been sent out has actually received attention. You know, if you send a communication and you don't get any response or any acknowledgement, you start questioning, okay, was the information delivered? Was this information understood, or there was not, it didn't get understood? So all those questions will now linger in your mind just because you didn't get the feedback. But once you have the effective feedback, then effective communication, then feedback will be achieved. Then also through communication, then things will be clear, and people will also understand the aspect of freedom of expression, and there will be accessibility, and also employee morale will be raised considerably because of that communication. Then also people will feel part of the decision-making process. Whenever communication is done, I may not be taking part literally in the process of decision-making, but whenever that communication is done constantly, then I feel part and parcel of the process. And when it comes to implementation, I'll not look at it and feel that this is something that has been forced down my throat. But I'll be able to see that this is how the communication has been done. I've been following this communication. I've been kept abreast with what is happening. The management has ensured that we're able to follow what is happening, and therefore I'll not have a challenge in integrating myself into the whole process of this implementation of the communication. So, ladies and gentlemen, still on the same frame, as we communicate, then we build relationships. And we've had different school of thoughts about relationships at work, how some people feel that the work is toxic or the work environment is toxic. Others feel the work environment is very friendly. And at times you just ask yourself, when you wake up, do you feel like going to work? If the answer is yes, that means you have a better working relationship. But if the answer is no, then you must ask yourself, what are these factors? What are these things that are making me not to feel like I need to go back to work? Because anytime you feel that you don't want to go back to work, then there are actually issues that needs to be addressed. Maybe you're not in good terms with your fellow employees. You have this employee that you feel you don't really rhyme, or you have this, or maybe sometimes even you're that difficult employee that do not work amicably with your fellow employees. So at this point, you find that it will breed a lot of conflicts. But then at work, we must always work towards avoiding conflicts. And here by conflicts, I'm looking at destructive conflict. Because constructive conflict means that we define ideas, we define components, we differ, but at the end of it, we come to an amicable conclusion. But if conflicts become they become part and parcel of us to the extent that they become destructive, then our relationship will be dented greatly. It's also important to note that we spend most of our time. In fact, if you look at in a day, apart from the hours that you're sleeping, then you find that maybe you're only spending 4 hours at home, but you're spending almost 8 hours at workplace or dealing with work issues. So looking at that, then you find that it's only a third of your time that you're at home. But 2/3 of your time you're spending with staff. So in that case, then your well-being, your health depends on the 2/3 that you're spending at workplace. So since we are spending most of the time at workplace, then we must always ensure that we look at our colleagues as friends. We need to look at them and see how well can we enhance these good working relationships. And we can do that by avoiding controversies and rumors at workplace. And that can only be done if we are open, we are behaving with a lot of integrity. We don't want to enhance or to create any environment of doubt within ourselves. So we have to have that open mind. And also we should not also drag things that are not important to affect the work that we are doing. And also let us accept mistakes. Let us accept the challenges with a smile and feel that it's part of our learning. So we should also celebrate important festivals at workplace for positive work culture. Let's celebrate what people do. Let's celebrate your cultures. Let's acknowledge what we are made of. Because that diversity is what brings in what we say the different DNAs in the organization, and it makes us to be proud of what we do. It makes us proud of what holds us to who we are. And also, where possible, as we build the relationships, let us be willing to assist. Let us be willing to step in and help our colleagues. Because once we do that, the small things that we are doing will now enable us to build a very positive culture. Apart from that, then we have what we call setbacks to organizational culture. What are these things that deter us from achieving a positive organizational culture? And I believe you've understood what organizational culture is, where our understanding is generally the interactions, the way people do things, the patterns of behavior that are exhibited generally, and how does that translate into the good working relationships at work. So ideally, as I said, organizations cannot exist without people. So it's the people that form the culture. It's with the people that come up with the policies, the practices, and how things need to be done. And once we have those documentations, then they tend to shape how we need to interact with each other, how we need to interact with the external society, how do we also need to conduct ourselves. And that's what the culture will be anchored on. So whenever new people come in, they come in with high aspirations, they come in with different perspectives on how they can transform their careers. And at the same time, when we bring people on board, we are looking at what sort of contribution are they going to have in this organization. Because nobody employs someone expecting them to fail. We employ someone looking at what contribution is this person going to bring to the organization. And at the same time, even when you are being recruited, you're also saying, I want to go and make a difference. Okay. So this element of the difference that you aspire to make is what will now be entrenched into the culture. But whenever, usually when things happen like that, and you find that people do not fit in that's where the challenge gets in, because people come with aspiration and they feel that this system, the system of the organization does not allow them to prosper. The system, the people that are in this organization are the ones that are pulling them down. So in that particular case, then it negates the whole purpose of what these people expected to undertake. But then how do we adjust to this work culture? We can adjust to this. We need to adjust to this new culture, by ensuring that as we get people joining us, then we should ensure that they have a free way of getting inducted. They understand pretty well what sort of expectations lies ahead of them. They should understand what sort of benefits will they get as they interact with people. They should understand what values inform the existence of the organization. They should also understand how do they fit in the whole environment. Because failure to do that, then it will affect the way they fit in. It will affect the way they also, the new staff will feel about the existing staff. So this work culture is what we expect people now to fit in very well. Otherwise, some people will get to the organization and they find themselves shocked. We call it culture shock. So you've been dreaming of this organization, and once you get there, you find it's completely the opposite of what you've been dreaming of. And that's where the culture shock comes in. You thought this is an organization that is not discriminating. You thought this organization supports people's development, but you get it and you're told, yeah, if you're studying, you don't need to inform your supervisor. If you're studying, if you're pursuing any career development, you won't be given time to do that. If you have to do your exams, it will be very difficult. You have to do this and that. So in that case, then you start finding that whatever you aspired, whatever you expected is contrary to what is happening. Now, therefore, because of those, then that culture becomes a liability, where you find young people feeling that the older generation are dictating things to them, or also you find that people are not retained because of the weak cultures, and sometimes the strict policies and harsh rules can sometimes create problems for employees. And in that case, then we need to look at how are these mindsets, or how do we come up with habits and mindsets that can enable us to understand each other. For example, an individual working in any particular culture for quite some time will develop certain habits and mindsets, which may be very difficult to change. And therefore, if these people have to move to the next level or to another opportunity, then because of that, you're used to a particular culture. And at times you hear people saying that if somebody has stayed in the public sector for a long time and they're trying to move into the private sector, it will take them a tall order. It will be a tall order for them to fit into that culture. And that we can attribute it to this, where your mindset and your habits have been so entrenched into you that at times now you'll find it so difficult to adjust to the new trends, maybe in this other sector or in the private sector. At the same time, also the new organization might not promise them the same facilities or comfort that they had, and therefore somebody feels that I'm not getting it's not worthwhile for me to move into this. Sometimes the incentive plans or the rewards may not be as lucrative as it was in the previous organization. So that way, people will start feeling demotivated. They feel that this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. Okay, so they have that challenge in terms of understanding what they're supposed to fit in. So it's also important that leaders are supposed to be at the forefront in entrenching these kind of cultures, where they should not just only look at the people, but they should look at how do we walk people into the culture? How do we lead them to the next level? So we need to have leadership that strives to influence and put people to the same wavelength, so that as they progress, they move to the next level, then they're able now to complement, they're able to collectively put their efforts together towards the next level of culture development. However, different people in the same organization can have different perceptions of the culture, This is especially true regarding to different perceptions between the top and the bottom levels of the organization. And this is now the controversies can come in when maybe what the CEO thinks is the reality is the opposite of what the staff at the lower level think about the reality. And that is the example we are talking about. The CEO believes that we are a very organized organization, we are a very customer-oriented organization, but because the CEO is not in line, or the CEO does not have the right, or does not understand what is happening, then if they're not, sometimes we say they're not listening to the ground, then you find that they'll be existing in their own perception where they say we are very organized and formal, but to the contrary, they are very disorganized, they are so confused, and even rude as per what is happening within the organization. So when you're doing your assessment of the culture, these are the kind of questions that you need to ask yourself. And this I think you'll do it at your own time. You need to ask yourself, in our organization, what seems to be acceptable or accepted and who doesn't? What is it about those who are accepted as compared to those who are not? We also need to understand what kinds of behavior get rewarded, for example, getting along, getting things done, or which other behaviors gets rewarded. What does the management pay the most attention to, for example, problems or successes or crises or other behaviors? Are we having management that they like to appear like they're handling crises, they're putting down the fire, or we have this organization that will always be celebrating successes and they're driving people towards success? Then how are the decisions being made? For example, are they made by one person? Are they made by the CEO? Are they made by the head of department? Do we have any discussion, consensus? Are decisions made at all, or they are not being made? So once you ask yourself these questions, then it gives you a hint on the type of culture that you're existing in, or the type of culture that describes your organization. So once you get that, then you'll be able to know, are you in a culture that is positive, or in a negative culture that is constructive, or are you in a destructive culture? So what are some of the factors or things that influence the culture of the organization? One, the reward employees whose behaviors reflect what's important. We can also influence culture by dissuading employees from continuing unwanted behavior. That means we discourage them from making or exhibiting character that is destructive. Then also we need to model the behavior that we believe will be critical to our organization. When we model that behavior, so that if we want to see people that are working collectively, then we need to mold a behavior of teamwork. We need now to acknowledge teamwork. We need to promote teamwork. We need to reward teamwork. And in any case, then whenever we are hiring people, also we are looking at how are they able to fit into a team. Okay. Then also we need to emphasize what is important in the organization. If it's about communication, or it's about the vision, the mission, and the accomplishments, that has to come out very clearly. So that brings me now to the models of the organizational culture. And one of the models is by Edgar Schein. Now, Edgar Schein's model says that a culture cannot be adopted or achieved in a single day. But he says that it is through persistent, continuous activities that happen in regard to the changing environment, and also trying to deal with external forces in a bid now to get to the end point of the organization. It has to be something that we build, just the same way you build a house. You have to start from the lower level. You can't just wake up and put the house, and it has to be there. You start by having the land, then after that, you come up with a plan. From the plan, stepwise. That's what Edgar Schein's model says, that this culture has to be built over time. It can be based on the experiences that we've had, so that it informs what we need to do better. It can also look at what our knowledge has. What is our knowledge about? So when we are doing that, then we incorporate that with the people that are coming in, then we tend now to build the culture. Now, the levels of organizational culture can be, for example, the artifacts. The first level could be the artifact, where we look at the dress code of employees, the facilities at workplace, the behavior of employees, the mission and vision of the organization will also be part of the artifacts. And just to have a comparison of that, you can look at these two organizations, organization A and B, where in organization A, no one is allowed to dress casually. In organization B, employees can wear whatever they feel like. In organization A, people respect their superiors and they don't have unnecessary disputes, while in B, individuals in B are least bothered about work and spend their maximum time loitering and gossiping around. Another description of A is that the individuals are very particular about deadlines and ensure that they do their tasks within the time limit. However, in this other one, employees use derogatory remarks at workplace and pull each other into controversy. So you can see a completely opposite organization of A versus B. And this is a typical representation of where we work. Whether where you're working currently, it could be a mix of A and B, or it could be a mix of, or it will be more on B, it could be more on A. But that's what defines our organizations today. Then we also have the values. So values will play a very important role because it creates the mindset of within which our people will be looking at the organization. So we look at, according to Shane, that the values are very critical. And we have what we call assumed values, which you cannot measure, but they do what? They make a difference to the organization. Because it may talk about the certain beliefs and facts, which stay hidden, but do affect the culture of the organization. It could be the inner aspects of the human nature and all that. For example, where you have dominance of female workers in the organization, in that case, female workers who do not believe in late sittings as females are not very comfortable with such kind of culture. But male employees, on the other hand, will be more aggressive and not have any problems with the late sittings. So the organizations follow certain practices which are not discussed, but often understood in their own rules. The second model is by Robert Cook. And Robert Cook says that people are free to, whatever they do, the manner in which I behave, and I feel that is correct, is what will help me to survive in an organization. That's according to Robert Cook, that every employee has a way of behaving at workplace, which he feels is the correct way and will help you to survive in the organization. According to him, this is what brings about constructive culture. So in this case, that individuals have the liberty to share their ideas, exchange information, and discuss things in an innovative way. And conflicts can arise when employees feel neglected. So according to this model, whenever I do things, according to him, is that when I do things, I'm doing things because I believe it's right. I'm engaging in certain decisions because I believe this will help us to be better. When you're having a conversation with your colleagues, then the assumption here is that your colleagues' mindset, your colleagues' thoughts are thoughts for the betterment of the organization. Therefore, it breeds what we call constructive culture. And eventually, this is what builds this constructive culture. So this constructive culture can be has the following features: a feature of achievement, where employees feel they will achieve what they have set together. Then we also have another one of self-actualizing. Through working as a team, through achieving what has been set, I'm also achieving my full potential as an employee. Then at the same time, also another feature is encouragement, because when we openly discuss, when you openly have our thoughts together, when you pull our heads together, that means I'm able also to feel that whatever we are discussing is enhancing the growth in myself and also the growth in the colleague that we are working with. And therefore, we'll strive to achieve better than what we are achieving today. Another characteristic is affiliative, where employees avoid conflicts and unnecessary disputes to promote ambience to workplace. Okay. So those are the features of constructive culture. It's a sense of achievement, actualizing, encouragement, and affiliative. So apart from the constructive culture, now we have passive culture, where employees behave in a way contrary to the way they feel is correct and it should be the ideal way. So in this culture, people are doing it because they want to please the superiors and make their position safe. It's like when you talk about people being psychopaths, when people just say, I'll do as what my superior is saying, then that's where we talk about passive culture, a culture whereby you're only doing things for survival. You're only doing it because you want to impress your boss, you want to impress your supervisor. But deep down your mind, you believe it's not right. You're only doing it because the system promotes that. The system expects you to behave that way. And that's why we're saying employees will be unhappy to adhere to these guidelines, but they'll follow that guideline because they want to save their jobs. One of the characteristics is approval, where you as an employee, you can't take any decisions, but you have to take the decisions based on your boss's approval to implement. Then you're also bound by rules, that's under conventional. So it's because of this prescribed standards and rules that you have to behave in a particular manner. Maybe you're not this person who likes wearing or communicating in a particular way, or you don't disregard, or you don't like the way things are done. But in this case, you have to do them because that's what the rules are. That's what the standards are in that organization that you have. If you're dealing with a client, this is how you need to communicate to them. This is how you need to respond. So you have to do it as per the culture. Then also this characteristic is that it also enhances passivity. The passivity is in terms of you become so dependent, whereby you as an employee, you are so dependent on the decisions of your supervisor. You're so dependent on the decisions of the person you are reporting to. And therefore, you'll have to follow that. Then avoidance. Employees will tend to avoid their own personal interests, satisfaction, simply because they want to meet the needs of the company. Then we have aggressive culture. Now, these are culture that promotes competitiveness. Employees will compete against each other. They seek their own assistance from others, and for power, attention, and also a sense of what? Of esteem. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, at the esteem needs, this is where now we find the aggressive culture coming in. Because of this aggressive culture, one is opposition. Then we have power, perfectionists, and opposition, power, perfectionist, and competitive. So in this case, employees, as we've said, are very aggressive. They compete against each other, find their mistakes, and eventually them. So that's what explains that kind of culture. Then we have guilt. Guilt Hosted is a very prominent author in terms of understanding the cultural aspects, the dimensions within a workplace, and it talks about these 5 elements: power distance, masculinity versus individualism, masculinity versus feminism, then we have individualism versus collectivism, then we have uncertainty avoidance index, and also long-term orientation. So according to Hofstede, all these, power distance is the level within which the organization has the hierarchies. So we have high power distance versus low power distance. If we have high power distance, then a lot of hierarchy. Low power distance, flat. Masculinity, where you're looking at recognition of the roles clearly, versus femininity, and also just attributing that to the way the culture of the organization exists. Then we have individualism versus collectivism, where the focus here could be, are we looking at the individual contribution? Do we reward individual contribution? Do we reward collective contribution? If we are dealing with an issue, do we look at it individual? From the individual perspective, do we look at collectiveness? Then uncertainty avoidance, where people are very shy to go against the rules, or they are very shy to go make any decision that will contradict. Okay. Then we're also looking at long-term orientation, where does the organization encourage, or does it look at the future? Does it look at things being done progressively, or does it look at meeting the present need. For example, if you wake up and say, let us make a decision on rewards, are we looking at rewards for prosperity, or are we looking at rewards for today? So all these will now border on the culture of the organization according to Hofstede. So this is just what I've explained, that every individual, regardless of their level of hierarchy, enjoyed equal benefits and rights. Power distance refers to the difference between what is at the top and also in line with how people need to interact. Masculinity versus femininity, male and female values in the culture of the organization. How are these values acknowledged in the organization? Do we have an organization where they say this is a role that is for female, or this is a role that is for male? Or are we looking at people who should actually get into the meeting first, who gets into the meeting last, or who should sit at the top level, who should sit at the lower level? So all that will be issues that come with masculinity and femininity. Then we have individualism. I've already talked about this, where we have people that are so drawn to themselves that I have to do things because I have to protect my territory. I have to keep information to myself. Or we have an environment where people feel that the information I have, it can only benefit us. And therefore I'm able to share, I'm able to be willing to assist, so that if you have a challenge as a colleague, I'll not tell you that I cannot help you, but I'll be coming in and help you. So that's where individualism versus collectivism comes in. Then uncertainty avoidance index. This one I've said, where employees know how to respond to unusual and unforeseen circumstances. We may look at where people feel uncomfortable with going against certain decisions, or are they willing to take, are they risk averse, or they are able to take risks or risk decisions and prepare themselves to adjust. The long-term orientation, I've talked about it, where we are looking at long-term relationships, long-term strategies, and is this what the organization promotes within the organization? Then organizations will get attached, employees will get attached to organizations and do not look at short-term objectives. On the contrary, some organizations have employees who are more concerned with position and image. Hence, these employees are only concerned with profits and targets, and leave as and when they get a better opportunity. So that's in terms of the kind of culture that we may have. Another theory is by Charles Handy, and he's a well-known philosopher. And according to Charles Handy, there are 4 types of culture in organization. We have the power, we have the task, we have the person, and we have the role. So power culture, where power remains in the hands of a few people. They're the ones that make decisions on behalf of the organization. They have special privileges, and these individuals further delegate their responsibilities to employees. And at times you find that whatever they say is now trickled down to other employees for them now to ensure that employees now comply. So employees have no role in questioning what this power culture is. On task culture, you find that people working on a particular task, people who are working in a particular department, they have that prerogative now to make decisions and to achieve their targets using a particular approach. Okay, so in such a culture, you find that the team members have to contribute equally because of the kind of responsibilities that they have been allocated or they have been allotted. In that case, so that they work collectively to achieve better. Then we have personal culture. Personal culture is where individuals are concerned about themselves rather than the organization. So you find that the culture that is thriving here is about the individual and not the organization. So it's about what James says is what is taken as the culture of the organization. So that means we disregard the policies, the practices of the organization, and we now look at what James, so if James says, can you pay this person today? You don't have to look at your policy, but you just pay. If he says, can you fire this person? You go ahead and fire the person. That's the element of, or can you promote? You just promote because your boss has said. That's where personal culture becomes detrimental to the organization. So in that case, employees just come to the office for the sake of money and never get attached to it. Role culture is where every employee is delegated roles and responsibilities are going to what they are good at. So if you're a marketer, if you're an accountant, if you're an ICT person, role culture dictates that whatever you're good at, then you are given the opportunity to do that work, to make decisions regarding your work. So you have to, you are now willing to make decisions. You are able to make or to deal with challenges as they come, and therefore you're also accountable and responsible. Now, how do we create and sustain corporate culture? One, we need to indoctrinate. We need to have what we call indoctrinate and socialize employees with the cultures or with organizational thinking. Then we should also look at who are the initiators of this culture. The ultimate source of the organizational culture is the founders. So we also need to hire and keep employees with the same thinking. We also need to have the founders' behavior act as a role model for the employees. So that at times you look at who are the founders? What do founders think? What is their intention? What was the intention of starting this enterprise? Okay, what drove them? And therefore they'll have that as a basis within which other people now need to get into that. Then also the personalities, founders' personalities is embedded in the organizational culture, because we always have to get to know what is it that the founders aspired. If it was an aspiration to serve the community, then what are these aspirations? If it was an aspiration to make profit, then how do we go about achieving this profit? So this organization's culture is formed based on the philosophies of the founders. Then we look at what are these aspects that we need to socialize people on under the leadership of the top management. Then we achieve the organizational culture. In sustaining, we can sustain culture by looking at three aspects. One, the actions of the top management. Then we look at the selection practices and socialization methods. Socialization methods are like the activities we do in the organization, from if we have team building, if we have induction meetings, we have briefs, we have departmental get-togethers, all that, those will be socialization methods. And in that case, then we tend now to emphasize what is it that we need to do? What is it, how do we need to conduct ourselves? And that will be informed by also the leadership. So the leadership will always be the drivers of this culture. Otherwise, it will not be sustainable. So whenever we talk about selection, then this will be identifying or hiring individuals with knowledge, skills, and abilities to perform the job successfully. Then also we expect individuals to have values with those consistent with the organization. Also, we look at selection being two-way street, where we also provide information about the organization to the applicants. Now, on top management, how much managers should give freedom to their subordinates, what actions we put off in terms of pay, then what risk taking is desirable. That's what the top management should lead on. Then on socialization, I've also talked about that, on how do we bring on board this person for them to feel part and parcel from the arrival, the encounters, metamorphosis is trying to acclimatize with the rules, the regulations, the conduct, and the expectations. Then how do employees learn this culture? For example, the stories you hear about what goes on in the organization, the success stories, the failures, what makes that organization to be where it is. We have rituals, things that you repeatedly do to enhance values of the organization. Then also we can talk about the material symbols, the CEO, what does the CEO, what is the image of the organization portray? What sort of behavior, what sort of leadership are we experiencing? That's what also informs employee culture. Then acceptance and preservation of the culture, that's in terms of the language. How is it communicated? What is expected, and how do people feel part and parcel of that? So ladies and gentlemen, there are some questions here that I will expect you to use. For example, which industry best describes the organization when you're just trying to understand the organization? which category best describes your position in your organization? Entry level, management, president. How many years have you worked for your current organization? 0 to 1, 2 to 5, 6 to 9, 10 or more. My organization has a current mission plan for everyone. So when you fill in these, then we can be able to aggregate and say, what sort of organization do we have based on these indicators? My organization is good at fulfilling their mission. My organization culture follows the company mission. My organization culture is developed by top management. My culture is shaped by internal factors. My organizational culture is shaped by external factors. My organization is diplomatic in how it handles all aspects of operations. My organization is authoritative in how it handles all aspects of operations. Okay, so all these, you need to choose the best option as you do your survey. So the first one is strongly disagree. 2 is somewhat disagree. 3, neither agree or disagree, somewhat agree. On 4, then 5 is strongly agree. So once you aggregate that, then you can best describe the culture of your organization. So all that is what informs that that survey. I believe once we share this, you can just do it on your own. So ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of my presentation today. It was just a small bit, and therefore I think I've now covered the whole bit as expected. So unless if there are any questions, I'll welcome any comments or questions regarding to these elements that I've talked about. Hello.
Hello, James.
Hi, Susan.
Thank you for that presentation, and very detailed. But from my side, it's a comment just to appreciate and to say that I think culture is something that we really need to be keen at and look at. It's food for thought, especially for me, just to reflect on what kind of culture that we are building at my institution. And I sit at the management, so it is really critical for me to really study and to know, given what you've taught us today, and to see which culture do we have, and if it's a culture that needs to be improved, we're going personally going to follow and to study the notes again, and try to build a culture that is really healthy for my team. Yeah, that is what I would say. But basically, that was rich content. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. So culture is, just to weigh in on what you've said, it's something that we keep on, it's like we always say, how do we make our culture better? Because as I've said, anytime we get in new people, get in new leadership, then you find that the culture that we have tends to get a little bit of shaky as we try now to align that to the existing culture.
True.
So it's important that it has to be something that is continuous, and we must at all times ensure that anytime we have, like when people exit, when that person is exiting, they're exiting with the culture that they had already been anchored in. So when you're bringing in somebody, also, you must always know that this person is not coming in with the culture of the exact person that left, but they have now to be oriented. They have to be taken through the metamorphosis for them to fit into the culture. So it's a very significant concept, and you've seen companies failing because of the culture. It's not about the profit, but you find profitable companies also not working well because the culture is toxic. So I agree with you on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So I think if there's no other comment, there's no other comment, we can close. We can end our presentation, and we are looking forward to other engagements in future. So thank you very much, and see you again in the HR space.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.